AOC squad attacks Trump, calling for his impeachment due to him being the most racist president of all time. Trump declares victory over the freshman Democrats as they refuse to condemn domestic terrorism. And the 2020 candidates Bernie Sanders and Beto O'Rourke might be finished. I'm John Prophet. This is the John Prophet Show. Well, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. We'd also love it if you went over to Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts so you can subscribe, leave a review, and listen to every episode of the John Prophet Show. We've heard it both ways and Coffee with the Colonel. Tons of great podcasts, lots of great episodes. Hundreds and hundreds. There's tons of content for you to go check out, so make sure you do that. I promise you will not regret it. Also, like I said, make sure you leave a review, positive or negative, so we can get your feedback, so we can know what you like what we're doing, what you don't like, and we can try and improve and create the best shows possible for you guys, the listeners. That's what this is all about. You can also access all our podcasts at axiomnewsnetwork.com, as well as thousands of great articles that we've written over the last couple years. You can get those there as well, so make sure you go check that out. All right, guys, let's jump right in. We have a ton to talk about. As I laid out in yesterday's episode, one of the biggest news story of the week, the last few days, has been this feud now going on between AOC, the quote-unquote squad, whatever you want to call them, the Suicide Squad, and their feud with President Trump. Trump tweeted out a couple remarks saying that if AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley, if they don't like the country so much, if they think they can do such a great job, why don't they go back to some of the countries they came from and then come back to the U.S. and help show us how it's done? A lot of people have called this racist because those 4 women are minorities. 3 of them are black and 1 of them is Hispanic. It's not a racist comment, not racist tweets. They are xenophobic, to say the least. They are ignorant and ridiculous and unnecessary and inappropriate, and I condemn them in multiple ways. But they are not racist. There's nothing to do with race there. He didn't mention race. It doesn't even make sense for them to be racist, considering they're not actually from different countries. It's just an ignorant, dumb tweet that he posted. He then came out to clarify that what he was, or at least he claims he's clarifying, that what he meant was that if they don't like the country, if people don't like the United States of America, then they should leave. Those individuals clearly don't like this country. They don't love this country, and Trump wants them to leave. That's obviously not what he said in the original post. That's what he's trying to, how he's trying to explain it away. With that being said, I do think that probably was his intention when he originally posted those, but that's not what he said, and they were xenophobic, but in the end, they were not racist. It was also a bad move because Donald Trump should have just stayed on the sidelines and let Pelosi and let AOC battle it out. They had a big feud going amongst themselves, whether they should impeach Trump, whether Pelosi's a racist, whether Pelosi should be allowed to criticize AOC and members of the Democratic Party who are minorities. Of course, AOC doesn't think you should be allowed to criticize her or her friends in any way, even though they are some of those morally corrupt and despicable members of not just the Democratic Party, but of the entire political class in this nation. And of course, AOC should be criticized, and people should be allowed to criticize her. And of course, her arguments are disingenuous when she says, "Oh, well, you're racist because you're saying that, or you're criticizing me in some way. You're racist because you're telling me to leave the country if I don't like it." Pelosi is not racist. Donald Trump is not racist. There's no evidence of that. Donald Trump should have stayed away and just let them battle it out and put them on the center stage, make them look bad, make AOC look bad, and make the country realize how ridiculous, how radical these people are, and so much so that they're willing to attack Pelosi. So Donald Trump really screwed that up by changing the news cycles and having everyone focus on him and his inappropriate comments. So what did the Democrats do? What did AOC and the squad do? They decided to immediately fuck up again, put their foots in their mouths so far down that they're shitting shoes, and decided to double down and attack President Trump, call for his impeachment, and just make some of the most ridiculous statements of the year, calling Trump the most racist president ever, the worst president ever, and reigniting this impeachment debate that has been going on between the more mainstream, the more establishment Democrats like Pelosi and people who are defending her, the Democratic leadership in the House. and AOC and her friends. So they've reignited that and brought the attention back onto themselves, and that's not something that they should want. The country knows AOC, they recognize her name, and because so many know her and know her policies and know the things she said, she has viewed very unfavorably. The 23% approval rating, very, very low. And Omar has an 8% approval rating, even worse. So the last thing they should want would be more attention, but that's exactly what they went for. In spirited remarks tinged with open animosity, Representative Ilhan Omar, standing side by side with Reps AOC, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib, declared at a news conference Monday on Capitol Hill that, quote, "It is time for us to impeach this president for openly violating his constitutional oath." Of course, they're not going to be able to impeach him, and he has not violated his constitutional oath. And just wait till you see why they think he should be impeached. Quote, "The eyes of history are watching us in this pivotal moment," Omar said. Yes, everyone, hundreds of years from now, everyone's going to remember Ilhan Omar. It's just ridiculous. It's not true. They're speaking in a hyperbole, and it's unnecessary and just pointless. The Democratic, and not true. The dramatic moment came just hours after Trump forcefully doubled down on his explosive call this weekend for progressive congresswomen to go back to where they came from and come back to show us how it is done. No one on the left is focusing on the fact that Trump said come back. He wasn't actually saying, I want you to be deported, I want you to self-deport, I want you to leave forever, I want you to, he did say go back to your home country, but he also said come back to the United States. So that's why you could also potentially argue that it wasn't a xenophobic original tweet, but in a sense they still kind of work, because you were telling people to go back to home countries that they act when they were actually U.S. citizens, and all of them were, and even the one who had immigrated here was a U.S. citizen. He also demanded they apologize for what he called their apparent anti-American hate. That is something that is clearly evident. In personal terms, Omar rejected Trump's rhetoric and outlined a list of grievances she said were disqualifying. Quote, "This is a president who has said grab women by the pussy," Omar said as her colleagues stood behind her stone-faced. Yeah, they all looked like they were in a hostage video, which is ironic considering Omar is very sympathetic to terrorists, and she was the one speaking during this. Hopefully she is not holding them hostage. I'm sure she's not. This is a president who has called black athletes sons of bitches. Actually, he called all NFL players who were kneeling sons of bitches. Not everyone in the NFL who was protesting the national anthem and who was protesting the country and protesting police brutality, not all of them were black. Of course, Omar's focusing on the black part because that's all the Democrats have, is call their enemies racist to try and shut them down, because they cannot form a coherent, articulate argument as to why they should be in office, why their policies should be implemented over Donald Trump's. They claim to be fighting for education, they claim to be fighting for healthcare, and they claim to be fighting for climate change or against climate change, but they can't put forward any kind of legitimate implementable policy proposal. There's no legislative proposals coming from the left on these issues, other than the Green New Deal, which we all know is a fucking joke. It's a farce, and the real purpose behind it is to try and dismember our current economic model in exchange for socialism. And that's something that the country is never going to embrace. Socialism is viewed very toxically around the country, and it's not going to fly with the American people. And she's obviously lying about a number of things. This is a president who has called people who come from black and brown countries shitholes. Actually, no, he was just referring to shithole countries. They weren't black or brown countries. They were countries that had corruption, countries that had issues, countries that had abusive people in charge of them. The worst country in the world is probably North Korea. Not a lot of black people there. Now, if a lot of the countries that are shitholes, a lot of countries that are struggling are run by black people, that seems more of a signifier, that seems more of an implication placed on the African-American community in those countries, or at the very least, the African-American leaders of those countries. Sorry, not African-American, but African leaders of those countries. Sorry if they happen to be black and corrupt. We don't have a problem with them being black. We have a problem with them being corrupt. And a lot of those countries, yes, they are shitholes, and there's nothing racist about saying that. In fact, and there's nothing wrong about saying that. There's nothing inaccurate about saying that. To distract from that, he's launching a blatantly racist attack on 4 duly elected members of the United States House of Representatives. No one's saying you're not duly elected. Also, no one gives a shit about what race you are. All of whom are women of color. Again, no one gives a shit what race you are. This is the agenda of white nationalists. It's not. Trump's not a white nationalist. There's no evidence to support that. This is the closest thing you can say to him to prove that he's been racist. You really don't have a strong argument. There's not a reasonable doubt. You can't prove past a reasonable doubt. There's no way that anyone who's not just super anti-Trump already is going to believe that Trump is a racist. Now, again, these tweets are definitely damaging because people don't like that Trump's tweeting. They think he's tweeting too much. And again, this changed the narrative. This changed the news cycle in a way that politically damaged Trump. Again, not racist, and it's not a white nationalist agenda. Trump, in fact, has called those who kneel during the national anthem sons of bitches, not black athletes generally. I already obviously alluded to that. And his comments concerning shitholes refer to places, not individuals. Boom. Exactly. Presley, speaking just before Omar, repeatedly derided President Trump as the, quote, occupant of the White House and said he was seeking to marginalize and silence the women. No, he just, Trump will shit on and try and marginalize and silence anyone who crosses him. It doesn't have anything to do with you being a woman. It doesn't have anything to do with you being black. Look at all the people in the Republican primary. Donald Trump went after anyone who crossed him. Also, it's kind of sad that she can't even refer to him as the president. Very disrespectful. And I was always respectful to Obama, even when I was ripping him a new asshole over his shit policies and being a bad president. These women do not respect the presidency. They do not respect Donald Trump. They do not respect the United States of America in a lot of ways. But she then issued a call for calm that appeared to go unheeded. I encourage the American people and all of us in this room and beyond to not take the bait, Presley said, calling the situation a disruptive distraction. But again, they decided to go ahead and take the bait. They decided to rail against him and call for impeachment. Instead, Omar asserted that the U.S. had a long way to go until it could live up to its founding values. I don't know, we're doing pretty fucking great considering a black refugee from Somalia who supports terrorism can get elected to the House of Representatives. I think we're doing pretty well, maybe even too well, as far as living up to our founding values. She repeated unsubstantiated allegations that people were drinking from toilets in immigrant detention centers. U.S. officials have contested those claims fiercely. There's no evidence that is occurring. That's not happening as far as we know. Right now, the president is committing human rights abuses at the border, Omar said. That's, again, no evidence supporting that. She then went into a spiel about Special Counsel Robert Mueller's lengthy probe, concluded earlier this year, finding no evidence that Trump team in fact conspired with Russia to influence the 2016 election, despite several outreach efforts by Russian actors. Omar slammed Trump for keeping children in cages, prompting Trump to tweet minutes after the news conference that illegal immigrant children were photographed in cages under the Obama administration. She even came out tweeting and saying in the speech, high crimes and misdemeanors. That's what Ilhan Omar tweeted, saying it's time to impeach real Donald Trump, but not for his tweets, but what she earlier said was credible accusations of colluding with Russia. She doubled down on it on Twitter, and she said it in her speech. Ilhan Omar believes Donald Trump should be impeached, not because he's racist, not because he tweeted racist things, which I don't believe either of those are true, but because he colluded with Russia, even though we all know there was no collusion with Russia. Donald Trump did not collude with Russia to steal the evidence. The Robert Mueller investigation explicitly states that there was no collusion between Donald Trump and Russia. There was in no way did any members of the Trump campaign work with those associated with Russia in order to steal the election. Didn't happen. Not only did they not find evidence of it, they are explicitly saying that we found evidence that essentially shows that this did not take place, and it didn't. But Democrats continue. All they have is Trump is racist and collusion and obstruction. They're not. They claim to care about all these different issues, but they're not really talking about them ever. And instead, they're just talking about. And then when someone criticizes them for only talking about race, only playing the race card, only talking about collusion and obstruction, then they say, "Well, we're the ones who care about healthcare and yada 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 and whatever, and you guys don't give a shit." It's like, well, honestly, most politicians on both sides of the aisle probably don't give a shit, but you certainly don't. The Democrats certainly, at least these Democrats, certainly do not care about these issues. They care about attacking Trump. And with that, Ilhan Omar has taken the bait. There was literally no collusion, and it's pretty un-American, in my opinion. It's pretty anti-American to want to overthrow the U.S. government for no reason. And that's what Ilhan Omar is doing. And I think Donald Trump has a legitimate claim that they are anti-American, and that if they're going to hate America, that they shouldn't stay in the country. And it's clear that that's how all of them feel. He backed Omar's calls for impeachment, saying Trump's language was disgusting and bigoted, and that his administration was lawless. There's no evidence that Trump's administration was lawless, and being disgusted and bigoted is not a high crime or misdemeanor, and Trump hasn't even been disgusting or bigoted. Salon, maybe you could argue disgusting, but not bigoted. And you could certainly argue inappropriate. But Donald Trump has not engaged in any real form of racism. Salon has called for impeachment, saying that Mueller and Nadler are the last chance to do so. Impeach now, even though there's no evidence of any impeachable offenses. Al Green, far left black Democrat in Congress, is saying he's going to enforce impeachment vote following Trump's incendiary tweets. Again, even if they were racist, which they were not, you can't impeach someone for being racist. You also can't impeach someone for saying they grab women by the pussies when that's something that happened before he was elected. They have no grounds, and that's why Pelosi is not going to bring forward impeachment, and that's why there's going to continue to be so much strife in the Democratic Party. It looked really bad for Trump yesterday. He gave the left a life raft. He distracted from a major feud taking place within the Democratic Party, and he made himself look childish and xenophobic in the process by tweeting out those inappropriate comments. Something that the American people are overwhelmingly sick of. 3/4 of the country think Trump tweets too much. They do not like the tweets, and yes, his approval rating would be probably 10 points higher if he was not tweeting so much, if people thought he seemed more rational and I would say more mature in a lot of ways. They would view him more favorably, but that perhaps there was some logic to his actions. I doubt it. I think this is just kind of an unintended consequence. I don't think Trump is playing 3D chess. I think he's playing, like I said yesterday, I think he's playing Chinese checkers but doesn't know the fucking rules. I think he's just moving pieces around and hoping that they work out for him. I think he's impulsive and he wants to do and say what he wants to do and say, and he does those things and says those things, and if they work out in his best interest, then he'll claim to be a genius, and if they don't work out in his best interest, then he'll blame someone else for that. That's kind of how he operates. But at the very least, Dems are maybe Trump use this tweets for logical reasons. Maybe he really wanted to get something out of this and thought this was how it was going to go. I don't believe it. But at the very least, Dems are bad enough at this that they're screwing themselves despite Trump actually helping them in a lot of senses. The squad is, the quote-unquote squad is currently punching holes in the life raft that Trump just threw to them. They just lost a policy debate and then promptly played the race card against the leader of their own caucus because they couldn't fight this policy debate, which, by the way, this is all their colleagues' MO go-to defense after they engage in anti-Semitism and engage in anti-Semitic outbursts quite frequently. So AOC and the Suicide Squad, they're now fighting with Pelosi again. They are fighting with Pelosi. Trump jumped in and he basically gave them, with his xenophobic take, he gave them an opportunity to back away, to unify, and to work as a party against the Republicans and against Trump. So then AOC and the squad immediately decide to call for impeachment, which is going to lead them right back to a fight with Pelosi. I'm glad we're all in the spin cycle of stupidity, which is ruining and worsening our political discourse, but at the same time is also negatively impacting the Democratic Party. Now they're going to be going back to infighting, and some of the most radical members of their party are even more front and center on the main political stage than they were beforehand. And that's very possibly what Trump is looking for. I think impeachment is ridiculous. The House, I think a resolution might be appropriate, though. The House on Tuesday, today, will vote on a resolution condemning President Donald Trump's racist comments directed at 4 congresswomen of color who he said should go back to where they came from. Excuse me. The resolution twice refers to racist comments by Trump, but does not call the president a racist. Seems pretty similar to me. You're saying what he said was racist, but he's not a racist. Don't usually only racists say racist things. Trump responded saying, quote, "Those tweets were not racist. I love black people. My best friend's black. Look at all the black people in my administration. I love the movie Lottery Ticket. So fucking funny. Chris Rock, the best. I don't have a racist bone in my body. The so-called vote to be taken is a Democratic card game. Republicans should not show weakness and fall into their trap. This should be a vote on the filthy language, statements, and lies told by the Democrat congresswomen, who I truly believe, based on their actions, hate our country. Get a list of the horrible things they have said. Omar is polling at 8%, Cortez at 21%. Nancy Pelosi tried to push them away, but now they are forever wedded to the Democratic Party. See you in 2020. Wink, wink. Gonna fuck you up." It seems very much to me like Trump is happy with where things are at. I think he's happy that he wants focus to be on these progressives, these radicals. When some of the most famous, well-known members of your party are polling at 21% and 8%, you would want them to be brought into the forefront, and that's pretty much what's going on. Republicans, there are a group of Republicans who are condemning Trump's Twitter comments. Scott, Portman, Collins, Tomey, and several more. I think it's appropriate to condemn the comments like I did on this show, but I can't support, and I don't think the GOP should support this resolution since the tweets were not actually racist, but the resolution is calling them racist. You cannot support that. It will pass, however, but it won't be enough it won't be enough of a condemnation, enough of a consequence, because there is no real consequence other than the House formally condemning him. And that's not going to be enough for the more progressive members of the party, and they will continue to be contentious. They will continue to fight their Democratic Party colleagues, and trouble in paradise will continue, giving Trump exactly what he wants, putting Omar and Cortez up on the center stage and making it so the Democratic Party is fighting amongst themselves. And I think there will be Republicans who vote yes along with it, but overall, I think many of them will do what Trump says, not fall into their trap, not show quote-unquote weakness, as he put it. And I think he's got a couple legitimate points here. AOC, I just want to go over some of the other comments that the squad made while they were going after Trump. AOC said, quote, "The first note that I want to tell children across this country is that no matter what the president says, this country belongs to you and it belongs to everyone." That was one of the first comments she opened the press conference with. Yeah, no shit, AOC. We all know that citizens of this country are citizens of this country. Everyone knows this. We all know that it's our country. It belongs to us. This is just pandering to radical young people who want to feel like they're being mentioned. That's all this is. And like children across this country, the children across this country aren't paying attention to this shit. They're going to school. They're doing their homework. They're watching Dora the Explorer or whatever the fuck is popular. They're not watching politics. And the only children who are aware of politics are aware because of their parents, which in a lot of ways is bad parenting. You don't need to be stressing your kids out and making them worried and making them freak out about climate change when there's nothing they can do about it and there's nothing Democrats are proposing to do about it. So this is clearly a virtue signal trying to say, look, we care about the children and the president doesn't. Not true. He does not know how to defend his policies. So what he does is attack us personally, AOC and Ilhan Omar said in the presser. Says the people who constantly have to play the race card because you can't win on policy debates, even amongst your own party. We just went over this. You just lost a debate with AOC or with Pelosi, so you had to call her racist, even though everyone knows that she's not racist. She's one of those liberal members of the caucus there. Absolutely absurd. Representative Ayanna Pressley said, quote, "We are more than 4 people. We ran on a mandate to advocate for those ignored, left out, and left behind. Our squad is big. We've got the biggest, the best squad. Our squad is a suicide squad. It includes any person committed to building a more equitable and just world." Oh, so it includes most Republicans as well. Is that what you're saying? Because a lot of Republicans want an equitable and just world, even though I don't know how you're going to make the U.S. much more equitable and just. We're doing a pretty goddamn good job at this point. It wasn't, and it's interesting because for a couple of reasons, it wasn't the squad type people that helped the Democrats win back the House. These radical leftists who are in this squad, the more progressive members of the Democratic Party, they won seats that were already Democratic seats. They just made them more liberal. They were just more liberal. They won from the left of the person who had the seats previously. The people who won back the House were moderates, were people who did well because they were not radical, because they're not crazy like AOC and all those people, allegedly. And you conflating the two, AOC and Omar and Tlaib conflating themselves, and Presley conflating themselves and the more moderates who won the House back for them, that's only going to hurt them come 2020. That's only going to make it more likely for them to lose the House. If AOC and Omar and Presley and Tlaib are the face of the Democratic Party going into these next elections, it's going to hurt the House. It's going to hurt the Democrats' chances of retaining the House. Look at the poll numbers that I laid out earlier today and yesterday. They're doing very poorly, and they're toxic members of the party, and they're going to, and if they're the face and they're the ones talking about all the issues and these far left issues, it's going to hurt their chances. The country is not as radical, is not as leftist as the Democratic Party is making it out to be. And if if moderates and independents and people who are on the fence are worried that these Democrats are going to be as radical as they seem, they're not going to vote some of these more moderate members in because they're going to see them all as one. So that's going to cause them a lot of problems. I think Trump and Republicans should hope that they continue to do that. And I truly believe that should be the move of Trump, of the Republican Party going into 2020. Make sure that AOC and these Democrats are as front and center, as vocal, as often perceived as humanly possible, and I think that's what they're going to go for. Trump tweeted, the Democratic Congresswomen have been spewing some of the most vile, hateful, and disgusting things ever said by a politician in the House or the Senate, and yet they get a free pass and a big embrace from the Democratic Party, probably because they're black and Hispanic. Horrible anti-Israel, anti-USA, pro-terrorist, and public shouting of the F word, that's true, among many other terrible things. Like Tlaib shouted, we're going to impeach this motherfucker on her first day in office. Inappropriate, obviously, no censure for her, and of course there's no evidence to support impeachment, so that's ridiculous in so many ways. Among other terrible things, and the petrified Dems run for the hills. Why isn't the House voting to rebuke the filthy and hate-laced things that they've said? Because they are the radical left, and the Democrats are afraid to take them on. Sad. And that's what he's going to do. Make sure people know how their AOC and the squad are running the Democratic Party, how far left they're driving the Democratic Party, and he's going to point to their hatred, their anti-Semitism, their anti-American sentiments, and their radical policies that are not going to be embraced by the U.S. This draws more attention to some of the worst members of the Democratic Party, and this is a great strategy, many of whom absolutely do not like this. They do not like this party. They do not like this country. It could also make these Democrats feel emboldened, which will also make them act more rationally moving forward in 2020. They got a big stage yesterday, and they said some crazy shit during it. Do you think them getting more attention for saying crazy shit and for calling racism is going to make them less likely to do that? Of course not. They're going to be even more so the way they have been over the last couple years. This fight with the squad is exactly where Trump wants to be in a 2020 fight. The more media and Democrats engage him, the better it is for him. He needs a foil. He likes a foil. Now stop with the tweets and just give public statements on the issue. I think that'd be a lot more efficient and beneficial to his political career. All this fight does is repolarize the partisans and leaves the up for grab voters who want to hear about bread and butter issues, actual policy. It leaves it makes them tune out from what's going on. You're going to energize Trump's base, you're going to energize the left, and then people who kind of weren't really that interested in 2016, they're going to still kind of not be that interested in 2020. And that's something that could benefit Trump far more than I think that it would benefit the Democrats. I think there's going to be more people who are fired up who are pro what Trump has done as far as policy, and that's why then there will be people who are willing to accept these radical politically unpalatable policies pushed by the left. That's why I think Trump will also, if he stops tweeting, he could really do well, because then people can just look at his accomplishments, look at the economy, look at their lives, and vote based on that instead of seeing his dumb tweets and being like, oh god, yeah, that guy, I don't really want to vote for him. So when his approval rating does really well, there's a lot of times when Trump is out of the country, when he is not really running the news cycles as much. Now he needs to run them, but in a positive way, and that involves not tweeting, especially not tweeting inappropriate things. While some Republicans say stop doing this, Trump says he's going full bore. He's going to fight the squad, and it's what he wants to do for his reelection. GOP pollsters point to AOC's high name ID and negatives and focus groups showing swing voters numb to daily controversies. A lot of people who are important when it comes to actual elections, they don't pay attention to the shit that's going on right now. They don't pay attention to the daily issues and daily controversies. They just wait until the election, and that's kind of what we're talking about. You're just firing up both sides and maybe disengaging some of the more moderates in the middle. 2018 proved Trump's strategy backfired. You just look at how suburban women did not turn out for him. But GOP strategists and pollsters are confident that 2020 will be a choice. They think it'll be a choice between the way things are going in the country right now, a strong economy, things like that, and a choice between that and a socialist Democrat who basically wants to destroy our current economic model and wants to bankrupt the country and do all these things that are not even close to reasonable. I say it all the time. Bernie Sanders keeps advocating. He keeps saying, we have the 1% of the 1%. They're the evil ones. And America is the greatest, richest country in the history of the world. Now let's change all of that. America is super great, super successful. Everyone's doing great. And the poorer people in this country are doing better off than the poor people in any other country. And their poverty is consistently diminishing. People who are in poverty have never lived better lives. And then Bernie Sanders is saying we want to completely, and AOC are saying they would completely want to trash the economic model that has led to America's success. Not going to go over very well. And that should be the choice that they set up. Do you want to completely ruin everything, or do you kind of like the way the country's going? They might as well, I mean, these Democrats might have as well have plugged the president's website for campaign donations. They're saying crazy shit on national television, calling for impeachment, calling Trump the most racist president ever. It's absurd. And I think maybe Trump actually wanted to put them front and center, and I think that's going to continue to be the theme. I mean, 2 of these people are open anti-Semites. Another has labeled detention centers concentration camps. And the 4th, over the weekend, said that minorities who disagree with them are all sellouts. So if you're a black person and you're not liberal enough, then you're a traitor to your race. And I don't think these things are going to go well. Seriously, just look at Tlaib and 18 of her closest friends and associates. Almost all of them have posted support for terrorists. Several of them have posted content that ranges from depicting Jews as rats to saying that Hitler was a dove compared to how they wanted him to actually treat the Jews. These are people who hate they hate Jews, they hate Israel, and they support terrorists, and they hate the U.S. I mean, yes, put them up on a pedestal and let everyone see what they are. There is so much dirt on these people, and we can campaign for years on these types of skeletons in their closet. Really, really bad move by the Democrats. But I mean, are we really supposed to take them seriously on anything, especially regarding racism and hate? No, I don't think so. And we're not going to. We're not going to take them seriously. We're not going to listen to them. And we're not going to let them... I'm not going to believe that whoever they're accusing is actually racist when they themselves are racism, and they also are the main members of the party who likes to cry racism. You know, they're not the boy who cried wolf. They're the party who cried racism. As I said earlier, I believe these members of the squad being in the limelight is only going to make them look even worse, going to make the Democratic Party look even worse. Because they came out and did this, naturally there were a lot of questions, a lot of reporters badgering them and going after them and trying to ask them about different policies they support or they don't support, or different things, whether they are willing to condemn certain terrorist groups and things like that, whether they are willing to condemn anti-Semitism and racism and things like that. And they are choking hardcore. I don't know if any of them can even breathe. They're choking so badly right now. Omar was asked by a reporter yesterday to respond directly to Trump's insinuations that she is a pro-terrorist communist. Omar said, quote, "Every single Muslim who has lived in this country and across the world has heard that comment, and so I will not dignify it with an answer." So you're refusing to say that, no, you don't support Al-Qaeda. You're refusing to say that, no, you are not pro-terrorist. That perfectly proves Trump's point that she is pro-terrorist, that she's anti-American. What are you doing? This should be the easiest question. That should be the easiest answer in the world. No, I do not support terrorists. I am not pro-terrorist. She can't do that. She's defended Somali terrorists she's attacked the U.S. She's called the U.S. Satan. She has a long history of defending terrorists, and now when she's has the biggest spotlight on her in her entire career, she's refusing to condemn terrorists. It's ridiculous. Omar's line is not altogether unexpected, since she recently refused to acknowledge that 9/11 was the responsibility of Muslim terrorists. Additionally, she defended 9 Minnesota terrorists who attempted to join ISIS back in 2015. Omar is also a Muslim refugee from Somalia, representing a district made up heavily of fellow refugees from Somalia. It's the number one recruiting spot for terrorists in the entire country. Her territory, her district is the number one for recruitment into groups like ISIS. A pretty big red flag for Omar, especially considering all her other behaviors and things she said. Omar will never utter a word in favor of anything American, because in her view, in the view of the many leftists, America and its influence has greatly damaged the native cultures of the world. She and others of her ilk would never give our military any credit for saving the world on more than one occasion. It seems Omar is aggressively anti-American and has a disturbing infatuation with defending terrorists. We also had Rashida Tlaib, who has a long list of friends, as I laid out earlier, who are pro-terrorists, defend terrorists, and who want to destroy Israel and likely the United States. She's also, Tlaib's also talked about dual loyalty, how anyone who has loyalty to Israel, is probably only doing so. I apologize. I believe that was Omar who actually made the dual loyalty claim. She was also the one who said it's all about the Benjamins, baby. She was saying essentially that the Jews with all the money, Israel with all the money, are controlling Congress. She, like I said, she was also the one who made the dual loyalty claim, which is obviously anti-Semitic. Omar is essentially saying that if you are loyal to Israel, if you're loyal to the Jewish state, you are essentially betraying the United States, and that basically if you like the United States, you would go against the Jews. It's a common anti-Semitic trope used to try and encourage Americans to disparage the Jewish people and the Jewish state. Tlaib said that the Holocaust gives her a calming feeling. AOC has referred to the U.S. as U.S. Detention centers at the border as concentration camps. I obviously talked about Presley and her thing saying that if you're black and you're not liberal, you're a traitor to your race. All kinds of anti-Semitic tropes, and anti-Semitic reps Omar and Tlaib are speaking alongside Zahara Bilo next week, who called Israel a terrorist state and has called for the destruction of Israel. AOC has also been at conventions where they chanted about destroying Israel. AOC's she backed the anti-Semitic Women's March. She's friends with Linda Sarsour, even though the DNC pulled support. She said America was immoral. She said that she would refuse to. She attacked Border Patrol agents, compared them to Nazis. She refused to stand and clap for when Trump called for an end of child sex trafficking because, well, I guess she supports that because she thinks people should be allowed to be trafficked into the country because she doesn't support closing the borders. Really, really bad stuff. So on top of their atrocious histories, yesterday, every member of the squad, initially, I referred to that moment where Omar refused to condemn terrorist groups. Every member of the squad also initially refused to condemn domestic terrorism and a specific attack that was perpetrated against an ICE facility in Washington. But of course, they got to freak out over tweets instead. A man he had a rifle. He was trying to set cars on fire to use them as incendiary devices. He was trying to blow up cars and trying to blow up the building and attack the building. Really, really bad stuff. A lot of them, and all of them initially refused to condemn them. Omar refused to condemn the domestic terror attack when asked on Capitol Hill. You can see the videos of them refusing to answer the questions. They're just ignoring their reporters. They're all online. Presley also refused to condemn violent domestic terrorist attacks against the ICE facility. This is absolutely horrifying. This is disgusting stuff. They are supporting terrorist attacks against the United States. Of course they are anti-American. They're supporting terrorist attacks against the U.S. It's unbelievable. This is horrifying. There is also no plausible justification for them refusing to condemn these behaviors, these attacks. Antifa is a left-wing terrorist organization, and prominent Democratic lawmakers categorically refuse to condemn it. I mean, imagine if it was the Republican refusing to condemn the KKK. It would be the biggest story in the fucking world. We wouldn't be able to stop talking about it. It just shows the double standard in the media, and it shows how awful and evil these Democratic politicians are. But many of them, they agree with the violence when it's furthering their liberal agenda. They're fine sitting back and letting terrorists and thugs do their dirty work for them. They constantly refuse to condemn Antifa by name and continuously, and it's because, like I said, they don't mind a lot of what they're doing. They're not going to go out there and start bludgeoning people themselves, but if it, whatever you need to do to shut down conservatives. Conservatives are so bad that it's okay to use violence against them. It's okay to use violence to shut them down. It doesn't really matter who gets hurt, how many people get hurt, as long, in their eyes, many of their eyes, the ends justify the means. Now, New York Representative AOC did on Monday finally come out and condemn the attacks on the Immigration Customs Enforcement facility in Washington. She refused to really elaborate on it. She refused to condemn the man by name, and she also continues to refuse to condemn Antifa attacks in general, which is why this is how this all sprung up. This is how this all occurred. It was an Antifa protest at this place that turned violent, which almost all of them do. And she refuses, as most Democrats do, to condemn them specifically by name. When asked by the Daily Caller if she condemned the attacks, Ocasio-Cortez responded by saying any act of violence is, of course, terrible. And that's all she was willing to say. All the others continue to refuse to condemn those attacks as of this recording. It's really, really Too bad. And honestly, yes, refusing to condemn them is in a way condoning them, especially when you're being directly, explicitly asked questions about them. And now there are people actively supporting and coming out in support of the attacks. Black Lives Matter activist Sean King, who's actually a white person, appeared to endorse, and even though he's like claiming to be black, claimed to be, and was one of the bigger leaders of the movement. He appeared to endorse the violent tactics of Wilhelm van Spronsen, the Antifa activist who attacked a private immigration and customs enforcement facility in Washington state. Also, I have to say, a lot of those Democrats, not only do they condone these behaviors, they're worried that they're going to lose votes if they come out against them. In a series of tweets posted Monday, King called Van Spronsen a martyr who was murdered for taking a stand against a treatment of migrants in detention facilities, and argued that his manifesto was beautiful, painful, and devastating. While he was killed while attempting to firebomb the facility. So yes, it's beautiful and painful and devastating and all these great things. And this guy's a martyr because he tried to attack a bunch of U.S. government employees. Really, really evil shit by the man who carried out the attack and by King for defending it. You have Democrats actively defending domestic terrorists, defending terrorists. You have Democrats who are pro-terrorists. I mean, this is ridiculous. Can someone please explain to me how this tweet and how Sean King's account are allowed to continue to be on Twitter when they claim to moderate against calls to violence and terrorism? They claim to ban people who engage in harassment and who encourage violence and terrorism, because this is quite literally an endorsement of terrorism. They're literally endorsing terrorism. He's literally even going further than refusing to condemn. He's actually actively supporting it. It's also worth pointing out that Twitter will keep someone like Louis Farrakhan and a lot of his posts on Twitter a lot longer than, a conservative who questions transgenderism, or who literally just says a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and that's a fact. They'll ban them in a heartbeat, but if you're a liberal and you can encourage terrorism, you're allowed to stay. It just shows these platforms are not actually platforms, and they needed to be treated as such. You're publishers now. You need to be treated as publishers, which means you're liable for all the content on your platforms, quote-unquote platforms, which means Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they're going to be sued relentlessly and they're going to go out of business. That's the only reason they're claiming to be moral arbiters and platforms that are unbiased and who are neutral, because they don't want to be treated and regulated as publishers, but that's exactly what they are, and they need to be treated as such. Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar also asserted that President Trump is the worst president we've ever had during a Monday night interview with MSNBC host Rachel Maddow. I would have never guessed that Maddow would have Omar on. Responding to the president's Sunday barrage of tweets directed at Omar and three of her congressional colleagues known as the Squad, the freshman congresswoman also said that Trump was inept and corrupt. Okay. I believe she said he's the worst, the most inept and corrupt president of all time. Trump is not the worst president of all time. Look at Barack Obama, for example. Barack Obama was a horrible president. He didn't do hardly any of the things he said he was going to do. He raised taxes. He divided us along racial lines. He said that police were evil. The police were responsible for racism, and the police were racist against black people, and black people were being targeted and attacked because of their skin color. He said this after police officers were attacked, after they were the victims. He said this after Ferguson, even though that guy was a piece of shit criminal who assaulted an officer who deserved to die. Barack Obama also, he said he was going to take it easy on whistleblowers. He said he was going to take it easy on journalists, but he targeted and imprisoned both. He also used the IRS to illegally target conservatives and conservative organizations who donated money to conservative causes. Let's see. He also sold weapons to drug cartels. He allowed 4 Americans to die in Benghazi. He fucked up the whole Libya situation. And now that country is one of the least stable in the entire world because of him and his administration. He also, what are some other Obama scandals? He also his policies led to the rise of ISIS. He even after ISIS was created, because of his policies, he continued to say that they were not a big deal, even though they were, and they ravaged the Middle East. So all kinds of issues that came from Barack Obama's administration. He wasn't a good president. He spoke nice words, and he was very articulate and nice, and he wore nice tan suits, and he did all these things that people liked. He was a good talker. But when it came into reality and policy, he did not implement things that were actually beneficial to the country, and he did not actually live up to his word. The country actually was a lot worse. The economy grew under him, but I think a lot of that was just due to, I think it actually would have grown more if it hadn't been for a lot of his restrictive policies, a lot of his regulatory policies, particularly regarding Wall Street and things like that, and taxes. So, a lot of, Obama was the worst president. We can point to a whole list of presidents who are worst presidents also. And so Trump's certainly not the worst president, and he's 100% not the most racist president of all time. Even though people like Omar and people like AOC and even Joe Biden have come out saying that Trump is the most racist president of all time. Joe Biden said, quote, "There has never been a president in American history who has been so openly racist and divisive as this man," referring to President Trump. Really? That's a statement you're going to stand by. Okay, let's just go through just a small list of presidents who are easily more racist than President Trump. Andrew Johnson. Historian named Meacham described the 17th president's history with racism, noting that Johnson once said in a state message that, quote, "African Americans were incapable of self-government and relapsed into barbarism if they weren't closely supervised," saying they were basically barbarians and they had to be monitored by white people. Most importantly, Johnson's strong commitment to obstructing political and civil rights for blacks is principally responsible for the failure of Reconstruction to solve the race problem in the South and perhaps in America as well. Johnson's decision to support the return of the pre-war social and economic system, except for the actual act of slavery, cut short any hope of redistribution of land to the free people or a more far-reaching reform program in the South. Andrew Jackson, also a very racist president, enforced the Trail of Tears, displacing and killing countless Native Americans. The internment of Japanese Americans in the United States during World War II was the forced relocation and incarceration in concentration camps in the western interior of the country. Between 110 and 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry, most of whom lived on the Pacific Coast. 62% of the internees were United States citizens. These actions were ordered by President Franklin D. Roosevelt shortly after the Imperial Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. Seems a little more racist to me than anything President Trump has said or done. And also, that just shows, like, literally AOC has tried to point to the internment of Japanese Americans to try and make what Trump is doing at the border look even worse, look as bad, but they're not. Everyone knows that they're not even close to being the same thing. Abraham Lincoln said that black people are inferior to white people, explicitly opposed legal and social equality of the races, and advocated sending them back to Africa. But yeah, I guess Trump's tweets are way worse than any of that racism. Abraham Lincoln, while racist, obviously did free the slaves. And, oh yeah, speaking of slaves, what about the 12 fucking presidents who owned slaves? There were 12 presidents that owned slaves at some point. You're telling me Trump's more racist than them? You're telling me Trump's engaged in more racist behavior than them? Fuck off. That is far more racist than anything Trump has done. LBG, literally, I just read a speech of his today where he literally started off by saying, "These Negroes are getting uppity." I'm not even going to read the whole thing where he does say uppity and uppityness and Negroes multiple times further in that statement. I don't feel the need to read it though, because the whole thing is racist. And let's be clear on one thing. Woodrow Wilson was, in fact, a racist pig and was probably the most racist president we've ever seen. He was a racist by current standards, and he was a racist by the standards of the 1910s, a period widely acknowledged by historians as the nadir of post-Civil War race relations in the United States. Easily the worst part of Wilson's record as president was his overseeing of the regulation of multiple agencies of the federal government, which had been surprisingly integrated as a result of Reconstruction decades earlier. He didn't want black people and white people working together. He didn't like that white people and black people were using the same hand towels and the same bathrooms and the same water fountains and just the fact that they were in the same parts of the buildings together. He didn't like that. Outright dismissals were also common. Upon taking office, Wilson himself fired 15 out of 17 black supervisors in the federal service and replaced them with white people. That's just the ones he personally fired. I'm sure there were others fired on his orders. After the Treasury and Post Office began segregating, many black workers were also let go. Woodrow Wilson was a vocal defender of the Ku Klux Klan as well. Historian Wesley Moody describes Wilson's most famous book as an academic A History of the American People as, quote, steeped in a lost cause mythology. The book was generally sympathetic to the KKK, describing them as, quote, men half outlawed, denied the suffrage, without hope of justice in the courts, who meant to take this means to make their will felt. He was basically saying that it was okay that these honorable men who were in the KKK were using violence against black people because the court system was not allowing them to discriminate against black people. Really, really racist shit. Not to mention, Richard Nixon said racist shit all the time as well. Probably not as bad as anyone else that I've laid out here, but still more racist than anything Trump has said. It's absolutely ridiculous. Trump is not racist. He's definitely not as racist as any of these people, and certainly not the most racist or worst president of all time. But even people like Joe Biden has started to espouse radical notions like that. Even Joe Biden has started to become as liberal as members of the squad, or at least he's acting and claiming to be as liberal as members of the squad. On Morning Joe interview that aired this morning, Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden responded to questions about House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's handling of the ultra-liberal group of freshman lawmakers known as the Squad. Not only is he starting to be as liberal as them, he's starting to defend them. Biden said he believed that Pelosi was masterful in her work, but further heaped high praise on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, saying, quote, I think the freshman, particularly AOC, is smart as hell. Whatever. Biden does not think AOC is smart as hell. And if he thinks that, then he is not smart as hell. But in reality, I really don't think he even believes that. He knows, though, that he can't criticize her or it will hurt him in the primaries. It'll hurt him with this radical Democratic base. Something that he is trying to pander to, something he is trying to court. The progressive wing of the Democratic Party is currently running the show. They're running their shit. And just look at the way more mainstream members are treating them and acting. It's pretty obvious. Bernie Sanders, who is a part of the very progressive far left part of the policy the party, who continued to say everything I said in 2016 was radical. It was radical, and they would never go along with it. But now it is mainstream, and the entire party is talking about it. Yes, we all know your radical policies that you espoused in 2015 and 2016 have been adopted by the Democratic Party. That just means the party is more radical. That's all that means. You're supporting my argument. You're helping my argument here. Bernie Sanders also said Speaker Pelosi has been a little bit too tough on AOC and other prominent progressive congresswomen. Why? How has she been too tough? Saying that the Green New Deal is not going to be implemented? Saying, no, we're not impeaching Trump for no reason? AOC is the one who called Pelosi racist. Don't you think you should be condemning AOC instead of Pelosi? But no, it's all about pandering to this far left base. They are being run. The Democratic Party is being run by this squad, and they are even saying that we're not just for people, and they're not just for people because of the influence they're having on the rest of the party. The rest of the party isn't necessarily on board with them or a part of their quote-unquote squad, but they're afraid to go against most of the things that people like AOC and her squad are saying. Mainstream members of the Democratic Party are actually defending them, and this is also going to benefit President Trump. Because not only are these progressives who are very radical, who are anti-America, not only are they front and center, not only are they going to continue to say radical, racist, awful shit, now a lot of the Democratic Party are agreeing with them. And then there's going to be some who don't agree with them, and they're going to battle. And it's just going to cause all kinds of controversies, all kinds of issues, and it's going to cause tons of news cycles. And that's exactly what Trump needs. It's going to make them look bad. Having big name Dems defend these people is only going to put more attention on the crazy, and it's going to demonstrate how the squad is essentially running the party. And there's going to be no coming back from this. If Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris and everyone, they all go all the way down the rabbit hole, they go all the way into the liberal matrix where it's okay to be anti-America and it's okay to espouse these crazy policies, yes, it's going to be almost impossible to win a general election. And I don't believe Joe Biden's going to be able to do it. I don't believe he's going to be able to win the primary, and that's why he's going so far to the left. But it's going to cause all these issues. I mean, Joe Biden literally came out saying, quote, I'll challenge Trump to do a push-up contest on stage if he makes fun of my age or mental state. First off, what does being able to do push-ups have to do with your mental state? I'm thinking someone who's willing to do push-ups on a debate stage for president actually has a deteriorating mental state. That's actually making me more nervous about your mental state. Also, I would love to see Joe Biden and Donald Trump do a push-up contest. I mean, can we put some money on this? I mean, let's make this happen. Can we actually? I think they still need to do their cage death match. I think that'd be more entertaining. And Biden would go down fast and hard. Everyone knows it. Just absolutely ridiculousness coming from the Democratic Party right now. What is Biden, a 5-year-old? He's going to do push-ups on stage, but apparently he's the best they've got to offer. A new Democratic New Hampshire primary poll came out. Biden is leading at 21%. Harris is in 18%. One of the first ones where Bernie Sanders is not really doing that well. Warren is at 17%, but Buttigieg is at 12%, and Sanders is at 10%. Oh my goodness gracious! Bernie Sanders is at 10%. Bernie Sanders. He is just going to have to drown his sorrows in pudding cups because he might be no longer a contender in this race. Bernie Sanders would do better in the Northeast than almost anywhere else in this country. And New Hampshire is in the Northeast. If he can't do well, if he can't be a top 3 in New Hampshire, Bernie's done. Bernie is done. And people, I think, are more interested in Elizabeth Warren than they are in Bernie Sanders in a lot of these cases. Buttigieg is going to be around. Bernie is going to stay around for a while, but it's not looking good. It's really not looking good for Beto O'Rourke, who came in at 0%. And there were people, Gillibrand at 0.7, Inslee at 0.3. There were people who were just above 0%, who were below 1%, but no one is supporting Beto O'Rourke. So he's pretty much eliminated. He's trying to claim that he's the wokest because he's self-loathing because his family owned slaves. Eventually he's gonna have to come out in a furry costume in one of these debates if he's gonna try and get enough attention and make headlines. I don't know how he's gonna stay relevant. I also don't know how Bernie's gonna stay relevant. It just shows that I think these top 5, I think also maybe Yang and Klobuchar and Marianne Williamson or whatever and Cory Booker could stay around, but I really do think that Gillibrand, Inslee, O'Rourke, they're not even going to make some of the future debates, and I think Bernie is kind of struggling. I think he's right there at the bottom of that top tier. And a lot of people have come out saying, particularly billionaire venture capitalist Peter Thiel, saying that he believes Elizabeth Warren is the most dangerous 2020 candidate. I think he has a good point. She's as radical as Bernie on economic issues. That's going to give her a lot of support. She's more popular than him now, mainly because it feels like his time has passed. She's a woman as well, so she's going to get a lot of female votes just because she's a woman. She also knows policy. She's kind of a wonk in a lot of ways. She can talk. She can have real conversations on these issues, particularly economic policy. She also clearly knows how to debate. She knows how to stay out of the fray. She knows how to get her moments in when necessary. She probably had a top 3, top 4 performance in these early debates. It's going to be interesting see if she can hold on to that. I think she's doing very well in the Northeast, in this early New Hampshire state where she really needs to be top 3. I think she's also as far left as AOC on social issues, so she could be a big threat because of her radical nature and likability, at least within the Democratic Party. However, I think Kamala Harris is going to ultimately be the nominee. Even in the middle, even in the Northeast, she is number 2 in those polls. She's had a great big jump. She's barely trailing Biden at this point. There's going to be some more black heavy states, African American heavy states, if you will, and later on. And I think she's going to pull even better in those. She's got all the characteristics of Warren, but she's also black and slightly more ruthless and willing to go for the jugular in these debates and things like that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But I think Bernie is in big trouble. I think O'Rourke is in big trouble. I think Biden is clearly getting nervous because of the radical shift that he's implementing. I don't think it's going to end up being Biden. I think it's going to come down to Warren and Harris. And I think Harris will ultimately prevail. All right, guys, let's do some best and worst of the day and then wrap this bitch up. All right, a ban on abortion referrals at taxpayer-funded family planning clinics is taking effect immediately, the Trump administration said Monday. The Department of Health and Human Services told family planning providers it would begin enforcing the rules after receiving the go-ahead in recent weeks from 2 federal courts. That means clinics receiving family planning grants to provide contraception and other services to low-income women will have to stop providing abortion referrals or they will lose their funding. So these clinics, they cannot, essentially what this means is they cannot offer abortion as an option. Obviously, abortion is still an option, but they can't recommend it. They can't offer it. They can't just say like, "Hey, you should go do this." They can't refer them to get an abortion. Not the best move, but it's certainly a plus. It's certainly a step in the right direction. Also, Netflix has edited the controversial suicide scene from the show 13 Reasons Why 2 years after the show originally premiered. I think it's a good move, but it's too little too late. There was certainly increases in suicides because of this show. There are a lot of copycat incidents. I don't think obviously you can easily Google how to kill yourself if you wanted, but I don't think Netflix should be encouraging this, or at least not so explicitly showing how to commit suicide, especially when young people are the ones watching this show. The scene depicted the girl actually slitting her wrists. And they actually showed it, and the new version will just show her like thinking about this, being sad, and then the next thing you know, her parents find her body. Too little, too late. As I said, too many people have committed suicide, and because of this show, I think it's great that they're starting the conversation about it, but it also, in the same way, in the same vein, encourages people to actually go through with the action of suicide. All right, let's quickly do some worst of the day. I saw a Washington Post headline today that was titled, Michelle Obama appeals to teachers. Make sure your students are registered and ready to vote. What she is obviously clearly saying here is not that she wants all students to be registered and ready to vote. She wants teachers to actually be pushing a liberal narrative, a liberal agenda in the classroom, and saying, hey, look, if you care about the planet, if you care about children not being killed by guns, if you think Donald Trump's racist, make sure you're registered, make sure you go vote. That's what she's encouraging teachers to do. She doesn't want children to be going out to vote for Donald Trump, and it really is discouraging to me that A, that she's encouraging this, and that B, that so many public school teachers do push their political ideologies and agendas on their students. That's why you see teachers, children, 6, 7, 8-year-olds freaking out and having panic attacks about climate change and about gun control and things like that, because parents and teachers are freaking them out for no reason. These children do not need to know this. Also, this is ridiculous sentiment, considering I would say probably 95% of high school and below students are not capable of voting. Very few people are 18 for any time in high school. I would say it's probably like 5% of students. So this is just ridiculous on multiple levels. Also, Kamala Harris's husband headlined a fundraiser hosted for her campaign by lawyers at Kirkland & Ellis on the same day the California senator blasted the law firm for its defense of Jeffrey Epstein, according to the AP. So Kirkland & Ellis defended Epstein, and Kamala Harris came out against them. In our democracy, no one, no matter how powerful or well-connected, is above the law. Yet Epstein's deal, secured by his lawyers at Kirkland & Ellis, calls into question the integrity of our legal system and undermines the public's confidence in that justice will be served. First off, lawyers and law firms, they're supposed to defend their clients. That's what they do. That's their fucking jobs. And she should know that, considering she was a former prosecutor. She likes to tell us that she's a former prosecutor. She knows what a lawyer's job is. Also, I have to question more so the integrity of her decision making and of her morality, considering she's the one saying that these lawyers are evil for defending this Epstein guy, and then she's taking their money. Further shows that Democrats are willing to take money from bad people. They're willing to say things and act like they care about certain issues and care about victims, but really they only care about money and power. All they care about is they want to get the money from the people, even if they've been bad. You see a lot of Democrats refusing to give back money from Epstein, from people connected to Epstein, and Kamala Harris is clearly one of them. She's a hypocrite. She's a liar. She doesn't care about Epstein's victims. She just wants money, and she wants to act like she cares about Epstein's victims so she can get the money, and at the same time, she can virtue signal and pretend like she is holier than thou and that she is above all this and that she cares about victims of sexual assault. Also, the feds have decided they will not charge the officer who killed Eric Gardner. Eric Gardner was the man who was arrested and then killed during the arrest because he was selling loose cigarettes. He was the one who says, "I cannot breathe. Please get off me. I can't breathe." They killed him anyways. They strangled him to death. Bad policing. The police need to be... I know it's a dangerous job. I know police are on edge. It's basically like being a soldier and being at war nonstop. And you see a lot of negative things and it jades you and you're always on edge. At the same time, you need to make sure it's a tough job. And if you can't do it, don't do the job. Also, if you're going to be doing the job, you need to make sure that you're able to try and do as much as you can to protect yourself without hurting anyone else. You're not there to protect your own life. You're there to protect the members of your community. Killing an innocent person is not a member of the community. The guy wasn't even selling cigarettes. He wasn't even selling loose cigarettes, and they killed him for no reason. Really, really sad. And I'm sad that he's not going to see justice. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to the show. Make sure you go over to Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud to subscribe and leave a review to the John Prophet Show. We've heard both ways, and Coffee with the Colonel. That way you can get all of our episodes. You can listen to them all. There's hundreds of them out there. They're all great. You're going to love them. Lots of Game of Thrones content, lots of pop cultural stuff and political stuff. Make sure you go check that out. Also, leave a review, positive or negative, so we can get your feedback, know what we can improve on and what we're doing great. Also, you can get all our podcasts and articles at AxiomNewsNetwork.com. Go check that out. All right, thank you so much, you fucks. Really appreciate your support. And don't worry, America. I'll be here for you tomorrow.